Can anyone tell me what happened to the Spawn film? Next up on Just to Talk So, let's talk about. And welcome to the Flicks Picks to the Nitpicks, and I am your humble host, No718, and we're gonna get right into it because I want to ask the proverbial question: where in the world is Todd McFarlane's Spawn movie? Haha, it is. Shout out to all my people that know where I got that from, because I can see them do a Carmen Sandiego movie. Actually, I think I heard that might be a thing. But in any event, I want to know where in the world is this Spawn film that they've been talking about for quite some time. Todd McFarlane, if you have not known, wanted to put out a film, and I think it was inspired by a fan film that was about Spawn that didn't really even show Spawn in it. And he wanted to go, I think that inspired Todd McFarlane to want to actually make a Spawn film, but not really deal with his origin story, but focus on Spawn as a kind of like a scary film, and him being like a kind of, I don't want to say the villain, but I guess kind of that, and very ominous, if you will. And I think that could work. You can make a story that has nothing to do with Spawn's history, and it could be scary knowing where Spawn is, the story of Spawn. You can lean into all of that very well. He can almost be a villain of sorts in it. And you can make a part 2 that goes into his backstory and fleshes him out, almost like treating Spawn as Pinhead if this was a trilogy. Pinhead in part 1, he's in it. He comes off as the big baddie, but in a part 2, just like in part 3 of I believe it was part 3, they kind of went into Pinhead's history, and you could kind of do that in the Spawn 2, and then you can introduce Jason Wynn and all these other characters, and kind of get into the part 3. And if you do part 1 right, you could bring in the cops, which in I forgot the detectives, the partners. You could bring them in, and if I'm not mistaken, they are in or at least one of them is in the Spawn movie that was casted with Jamie Foxx as the lead role of Spawn. And I think his voice could work well as for Al Simmons, his voice, because he could do some interesting voiceover work for the idea that Todd McFarlane had for his film. So you can hear Spawn in the background. I can hear Jamie Foxx do the whispering, and if he goes hard with it, he could even probably elicit some fear or creep value and make it creepy. That said, with Jeremy Renner, if I'm not mistaken, playing one of the detectives, you can kind of do that in the first movie. As long as you have the detectives are consistent from 1 to 3, you can have the detectives following a case that brings Spawn in, but he is kind of like the bad guy, leaving chains and bodies all over the place in the area. And you could kind of use the first movie to world build, make Spawn a figure to be feared, and to flesh out his humanity by telling his origin story and making it more about him as a character, Al Simmons, and then make part 3 fully about Spawn. One about Spawn from another point of view, the fear and the scare tactics of it, and the cops that's trying to track down these murders. 2 could be the story of Al Simmons, still was told in the present via flashbacks, however you could do if you do it right. Then 3 can be him emerging as an actual superhero. In 3, Spawn, encompassing what we think of Spawn on the streets in terms of the scarier aspects, like 1, 2, Al Simmons and him coming together as Spawn now, and we get a total view of Spawn in the 3rd film. But that's how I'm thinking it will look. But what Tom McFarlane has been on the record for saying was basically how I'm talking about part 1, which I pulled from what he was saying. He just wants Spawn to be kind of like the ominous background bad guy, if you will, like you see him but you don't type of deal. And a lot of people didn't like that kind of idea. I think it's a cool idea to set him up. It'd have been better had no one known that was going to be a Spawn movie and you could have called it something else. And at the end you find out, oh, this is a precursor to the Spawn movie. But we're here now, and he already said this is what he was going to do. So it's going to be hard for comic book readers to want to take that slow approach to it. Like I said, Tom McFarlane's been on the record for saying, yeah, we could get into his origin in another film, but this film, this is how he wanted to approach it. And creatively, I think it's a creative idea. I don't think it'll work well over with a lot of people. That's the thing. But you can make it definitely low budget and make your money back to make a part 2 to go into that direction of a more comic book feel where you can see Spawn, his costume, and put more money into it. But still try to keep it at a practical effects budget as possible. And then in 3, then you could go with him maybe going into hell and all of that other stuff. But which may or more than likely require a lot more CGI and computer generated effects and special effects and all of that, and visuals. But where is this movie? We've been talking about it for a long time, and basically what it boils down to and what everyone's going to say is because Todd McFarlane wants to direct it. He's not a director. Everyone's been saying it. It's the truth. He's not a director, but he has a hand on his characters, which I actually respect. I respect the fact that he wants to direct it. But the thing is, how are you going to get the funding for it? The only way is if you push it as not just a low budget film. You're really going to have to make it like an indie film. And you're going to have to put yourself into it. And again, with Tom McFarlane being so hands-on with the figures and Spawn itself as well, but the DC figures line and him being so heavily immersed in it, it's going to be hard to get him up out of that to actually focus on directing a movie in which he's never done before. He's going to have to take a time off from what is his primary directives with his figure line to focus on this film, and I don't know if he has the attention span to do so, nor the want, because once you're devoted to this film, you're devoted to this film. It'd be good if he could have another director on set with him. But again, I don't knock his enthusiasm for going for it. But he needs to go for it. Otherwise, you're going to have guys like me asking the proverbial question. Whatever happened to that Spawn movie? With that being said, leave it in the comments below and let me know what you guys think, man. Do you feel like I feel? Have you even forgotten that this movie was announced? Leave it in the comments below. You already know what to do. Like, share, subscribe. See you next time. And as always, time for an outro. Chill.